My name is Carrie, C-A-R-R-I-E, middle initial L, last name Thornhill, Thornhill.
For a little background, could you tell me briefly about yourself? How long have you lived or have been involved in the Hillcrest community? You could include any involvement you may have had in the Hillcrest Community Civic Association.
Well, let's see. My husband, who is now deceased and has been for 8 years, and I moved here in November of 1985. And so that means now 25 years, I guess. The year after, so I started participating in the HCCA in January of 2000, when did I say I moved in?
25 years.
November of 85. So January of 86 is when I started attending HCCA meetings. And now I'm not going to remember the years that I served, but I have served under Pastor Singer, Vincent Spalding, and Karen Williams as our presidents. And even though I didn't serve under Paul and Belva, I knew both of them and have worked with them on various HCCA activities, Belva on A&C activities. I've served in the role of, I'm trying to remember, did I serve as secretary? I certainly have served, intermittently to fill the secretary role when they are not there, but I've served as second vice president, I've served as first vice president, I have chaired the education committee, I've chaired the anniversary committee, and I now chair the streets, traffic and transportation committee, and I've also chaired the bylaws committee.
As you may know, this oral history project is a continuation of the 20th anniversary celebration of the Hillcrest Community Civic Association. In thinking about your neighborhood, Hillcrest, will you define it as a strong DC neighborhood? Tell me why, and also explain what is your definition of a strong DC neighborhood.
Good question. I think that Hillcrest is a strong and effective neighborhood, and I think that HCCA is a strong and effective civic association. And what I consider to be a strong neighborhood is an organization, is a community that has influence and is able to get things that it wants done in reasonable periods of time. And they are also a place where people want to come and learn and live. So and a strong neighborhood is where people care about each other and care about the well-being and of their neighborhood as well.
You mentioned earlier that you saw Hillcrest Community Civic Association as also being strong. So what do you see as its role in creating this strong DC neighborhood? How do you think HCCA has engaged its residents of this community to encourage active involvement and participation? And to what extent do you think the HCCA has sufficiently engaged the residents in the other part of the city? I want you to think about our internal and external interactions and think long term from the past 20 years or so since you've been a member of the HCCA.
Well, I think that our civic association has a number of mechanisms that have been put in place that provide an opportunity for engagement. That includes our various committees. It includes our I call flagship events and activities, including the home and garden tour. It includes the Blessing of the Trees festival. It includes the newsletter, and includes the website, because I think those are our major flagship activities. But also our neighborhood block club, block zone system, created by Dennis Logan and continued by our continuing public safety officials. And the level of engagement varies, and of course I shouldn't leave out memberships, because you know, providing the opportunity for people to be members of the organizations in a formal way is also a part of that engagement. But the level of engagement varies, depend on the strength and assets and interests of our various leaders, whether that be the officers of the association, the heads of our committees, etc. So there are you know, varying levels of engagement that you have depending upon how effective the strategies and the interests of our various leaders.
So how effectively has the HCCA worked with the Hillcrest community, and by extension the rest of Ward 7, to garner goodwill, promote neighborliness, and maintain a wholesome community? And how effective, you mentioned the website and the newsletter, but how effective has the various forms of communication and outreach proponents been? How effective have they been? Or is there room for improvement?
There's always room for improvement. And as I said, there have been highs and lows and mediums, if you will, in terms of the level of engagement and how effective we are. We don't have any formal evaluation of our work, and you know, if you ask members, you know, it depends on how long they've been around, you know, what their vantage point has been, you know, the insights that they have. You know, there will be some who will say things are better now than they used to be. There are just as many who would say probably that things used to be better. But that's the way things are always going to be. There are going to be different perspectives about that. Periodically we take surveys, you know, and get the pulse of our community, and I think that overall people still think that this is a very strong and effective organization, and I agree with them.
And to what degree do you see HCCA and the Hillcrest neighborhood as extensions of each other? In other words, how effective would one have been without the other in creating a strong DC neighborhood? Do you view them, Hillcrest and the HCCA, as separate entities, or are they one and the same? When one does well, does it naturally bring along the next, or does success occur individually? So, and why do you see it this way?
Well, certainly the neighborhood is, you know, a geographic, is a place. The Hillcrest Community Civic Association, you know, is a thing, if you will. So there are separate entities that have worked well together, and I think that Hillcrest is strong because of its people and its institutions, if you will, and the beauty of the environment. So they work together to make each other effective and more effective. There is no, I do not see the ability of one to do well without the other.
The Hillcrest neighborhood has been known for its civic-mindedness, neighborliness, caring, and respect for the beauty of the environment. Is this something you agree with? If so, why? Are there any other adjectives you use to describe Hillcrest and the HCCA?
Well, in fact, those terms came out of one of the surveys that our anniversary committee instituted in February, if I recall correctly, of 2009 to help us gauge what the members felt were the themes that they wanted to see lifted up and highlighted during the course of the anniversary, and to get some sense from them about what kinds of activities they wanted to participate in as a part of the anniversary. And so I totally agree with them, and think they are that they are the priority and most prominent dimensions of our community, because they do in fact speak, I think, very strongly to the whole the natural beauty, the beauty that the people and the structures have brought to the process, and then they also talk about the interaction of neighbors and with their organizations and with the people who live here. So I'm not sure that I have any other themes besides influential. I have the privilege of working across the city, as well as, visit other places, and, have been studying, if you will, civic involvement and civic engagement for many years. And so this is a very influential community that is able to move an agenda, one, to set an agenda, as well as move an agenda to get things done to benefit the people who live here in very thoughtful and strategic ways, I believe.
Do you have any specific examples that might underscore this neighborliness or civic-mindedness of the residents? And feel free to be as descriptive as you can.
Well, I'll just use, let me think of one example, is that when the legislative body of this city is considering any legislation that is going to impact on this area of the city, the Hillcrest neighborhood, we participate. That you can't say that about a lot of neighborhoods in this town, because I don't think yet that Ward 7 and Ward 8 in particular, and some of Ward 5 are as much don't have as much presence consistently before the legislative and executive branches. So there's a lot to be desired in that regard, but we are there. I don't care whether it's public safety, whether or not it's transportation and streets, whether or not it's, we haven't been as engaged in the education arena, but it has more to do with the way that this administration, I think, has functioned as we had in the past. But we are active with our local schools, so that hasn't changed. While we don't go before, because there is no Board of Education the way it used to be, so we don't appear there like we used to. And I don't think we've appeared before the State Board of Education, since it's been in place. But the point is, all of the issues that we care about deeply, our presence is known. We also communicate regularly, as leaders with the various leaders of the executive and legislative branches. So there are multiple examples, but I think that making sure that the voice of this community is heard in the strategic places of influence on policy and practice in this town, we are there.
And since the first time you moved to this community back in the 1980s, do you see a continuation of that civic mindedness and neighborliness? You've been involved since then. Have you seen it changed over time? Is it better, worse? And do you have an opinion on the HCCA and its helping with this continuation?
I see a continuation. You raised a question earlier about improvement, need for improvement, and I didn't speak to that because I do want to speak to that because I think this is an area over time we have continued to have difficulty getting people to step up to the plate and serve in leadership roles, and that's and while that is a challenge for us in this neighborhood, it's universal, and so but that's certainly a challenge that we face, and we have to continue to figure out ways to address it. I think that some of our people, finding new ways to get the work done, I think is important. One of the things that I think that we can do a better job of is in our membership, reaching out to our neighbors. We have in at least 3 retreats that I've participated in, had an outreach strategy which said we were going to go out into the neighborhood and knock on doors and invite our members to be a part of the Civic Association. We have never done that, and we're so squeamish about doing it. We always use the Jehovah Witness. They just think that people are going to reject them, because they don't like the Jehovah Witnesses coming to their doors, and I just think that that's not a very good excuse, because I think that in this era that we ought to be reaching out and encouraging people, and because everybody, this is a new day, a new time, so that you just can't use the practices of the past and assume that you're going to be able to continue to maintain a certain level of engagement, and so I think we need to get more courage. I think that they will be surprised. I think that another strategy that we are not using effectively, and it's in terms of our block club operations. I think that I'm talking more not just about from the perspective of public safety, but also in terms of making sure that the people who live in the neighborhood know each other, look out for each other, and enrich their life here with the people who they live with. I think having block gatherings is a vehicle for doing that. But I think that it too requires leadership. And so you got to have people all around the neighborhood who are willing to do it. And I just think that it's an area where we're not as strong as we were once when Dennis Logan was in charge, say, of the neighborhood watch. That's the term I was trying to remember earlier. And we had a block captain for every block. Now, in my block, as an example, my block captain passed away last year, and we need to pull our block together because we haven't had a block meeting now in 2 years. I had the last one. My neighbor and I joined together and had our block meeting, had intended to have one this year because I got a new neighbor right across the street, and I promised to have a party for him. But I'm so busy doing all these things, and I haven't gotten around to doing it. But the point is, we need to make sure that, you know, and if somebody were calling and reminding me, okay, Carrie Thornhill, we got to have a block. You got to have a block. Every block is expected to have a block gathering, you know, in the course of a year. And so we expect that we're going to make sure that somebody is responsible for keeping you, pushing you to make sure that that happens. And so, I mean, I don't mind taking leadership if, you know, but I have to have people to help me make sure I do it. Because I have a lot of other things to do. And if that's not a priority, then it doesn't get the attention that it deserves. But those are two areas that I think we need to strengthen.
Now, based on the length of time you've lived in Hillcrest and based on your own observations and interactions, what do you see as the 3 core elements that make for a strong neighborhood in the District of Columbia? I have examples may include respect for one's neighbor, respect for keeping your yard clean, being able to say hello to one another. You had mentioned some of those earlier, but what do you think are the 3 core ones that make for a strong DC neighborhood?
Well, I'm just thinking about the examples that you gave. I believe that the core elements for a strong neighborhood for me, are things like there are opportunities for neighbors to get together and work together to improve their condition in their neighborhood. That's a central element for me. There are opportunities for neighbors to get together and socialize. And there are opportunities for neighbors to help others. And that includes helping our young people, helping our schools, helping improve our environment. I guess that could be associated to the earlier one I mentioned, but you know, some of it is about helping yourself, and another part of it is about helping others. So the things about respect, those are basic characteristics of human beings, you know, and I think that the neighborhood, the opportunities that people have to demonstrate that are the elements, go to the elements of what makes a strong neighborhood.
And is there anything else you can think of which highlights Hillcrest as a strong DC neighborhood, and anything that shows the HCCA as helping to facilitate that strength?
Well, I think I may not have mentioned this earlier, but part of being a strong neighborhood, of course, means civic activism in a lot of different ways, and one of them is that this neighborhood has been very politically active and has taken initiative, not just wait for things to happen to it, but takes initiative. And I think that as an example, the you know, members of our, you know, neighborhood choosing to launch the Anthony Williams campaign. You know, while our association didn't do that, it were the people who are associated with our association who did that. I also think that the providing the forum for the City Council Roundtable to take place after our civic meeting every month is another one of those initiatives. That is a credit to you know, our current leadership of our association, because that has made a tremendous difference in having the ability to talk with oftentimes all 3 of the city council members who live in our neighborhood, and to have access to the chairman of the city council every month. I mean, that's unheard of. And so only in Hillcrest if you will, could that happen? And of course, we expect other neighborhoods now to, you know, attempt to do something like that. But I think that our political activism is also a dimension of our strong neighborhood.